Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich, and this is another edition of Source Material Live. Yes, Jesse Starcher is still out there in Ohio giving ways and means to the people far and wide, and he can't be with us tonight, so this is not the typical edited, cleaned up, prettied, and gag-reeled source material that you normally get from Jesse Starcher. You get me, who hits a button like a monkey and says, "Go! Dance, monkey, dance!" So joining me on this monkey parade with these monkey shines tonight to talk about the 2004 Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale limited series, 6-issue limited series, the parallel to Batman Dark Victory, which was the sequel to Batman The Long Halloween. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking Catwoman, When in Rome, and here to talk about it is resident girl from Honeysuckle Rose Creations, Alexis Hejna. How do you do, madam?
Oh, buonasera, buon signore.
Gesundheit.
When in Rome.
Yes, do as the Romans do.
I actually did try to learn a little Italian back in the day, and those familiar with this book know that there's a few pages, well, not pages, but there's a few panels written in Italian that they did not bother to give us translators to, so, thank God for Google.
So I was reading I read this online, and there was a comments page, and there was a handful of various comments all saying the same thing, that the Italian in this book is awful. Just not well written at all.
Possibly. Let me put it this way. I'm still trying to learn Romanian to converse with my in-laws, and they tell me that when I speak, I apparently butcher the language and add a French accent.
Well, everything sounds better when it sounds French.
Not Romanian, evidently. We went over to see his grandparents years ago. It was my first introduction to them, and I'm trying so hard, and they're just looking at Audrey. It's like, does she realize that she sounds like a total freaking idiot?
Oh, well, listen, I give you credit for trying. And by the way, you opening up with a little bit of the Italian there, and me making jokes as I am wont to do, would have my grandmother, my poor dear Italian Nana from Sicily, just crying in shame. How do I not, how am I not able to converse in Italian? It's because it's easier for me to make jokes than it is to learn languages. And that's who I am, folks. That's who you tuned in to listen to. All right, so, Catwoman, When in Rome. I asked you to read this book and talk about it with me this year in the month of June.
And my reaction was, this book is over $75 bound in hardback on Amazon alone. That's not even getting to the people who are charging a fortune for it on eBay. Love you, Mark, but not that much.
Yeah, as I was telling you offline, initially Wonder Woman was supposed to come out this week, and so I figured, well, with Wonder Woman coming out, why don't we dedicate a whole month to the women of DC? And so we were going to do Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Batwoman, and we are still going to do those two. Wonder Woman we're not going to get to till August because the movie got pushed back due to the COVID. But I needed a fourth book, and I was looking at the various DC women out there, and I was like, who we don't ever talk about except as kind of an ancillary to Batman, and I think she deserves more than that, and I said, it's Catwoman. So as I was researching and looking for things to do, I just stumbled upon this. I didn't even realize, first of all, like if you look at the cover of the collected edition, this thing looks like it was written in the 70s. Never mind 2004. But I thought it was an interesting thing, and I just picked it out of a hat basically, and it's like, yeah, we don't ever do stuff like this, so let's give it a shot. Turned out to be really good.
The cover does have an almost Saul Bass style to it, which I absolutely love. Father of minimalism titles, king of the Hitchcock opening credits. So I always get a major kick out of seeing stuff like that. And Catwoman really doesn't get her dues, I think, in terms of pop culture. While she is obviously one of Batman's best-known members of the Rogues Gallery, opponents, anti-heroes, what love interest, whatever you want to call her. The fact is that, unfortunately, she has gotten her name just tarnished with a lot of really crappy comics. I know there's at least one collection that essentially parallel or reverses the roles of Batman and Catwoman. Her costumes looks ridiculous, and they gave her a maid assistant who dresses in lingerie because they clearly don't understand what Alfred actually is. And oh God, it's a horrible book. And then, of course, you have the gut-wrenchingness that is the Catwoman live-action movie.
You say gut-wrenchingness. I say that is a misunderstood masterpiece.
You reviewed it on trial, and you were the positive, weren't you?
You are damn right I was. Halle Berry is an inspiration.
Go check out our on trial for the live-action Catwoman, folks. It's in the archives. Plug. But even then, when you look at a lot of the movies that Catwoman has been in, she really doesn't get her dues. As much as a lot of people loved what they did with the Tim Burton version and Batman Returns, that really wasn't a faithful adaptation of the character, and her motivations were kind of all over the map. And a lot of people were not fans of Anne Hathaway's version, but that whole movie was just kind of a mess.
Yeah. I mean, that at least they made her a cat burglar, which is what she was, hence the Catwoman. And the Nolan Batmans, utilizing tech as, part of the costume. So, like, when she flips up her goggles, she looks like she has cat ears, that sort of thing. I mean, that gave the Nolan verse a bit of charm to it. But yeah, I think your point is well made. Catwoman, it's either she's, wry sex kitten in the 60s Batman show, she's super villain monster in Batman Returns, or she's a second, third tier character in the Nolan verse. So there hasn't, and then of course there's Halle Berry's representation of her, which was masterful. So
no, it just seems like she's a character that a lot of writers don't really know how to handle if Batman is not there by her side at full time.
So I thought this was a great way to sort of explore the character in her own series. And, Robert Winfrey likes to kid me that I don't do nuance well, I don't do esoteric or subversion. I like straightforward narratives. And this is a very simple story, but I think you start with something, where the girders are very straightforward and very simple, and then you dress it up. And that's Catwoman When in Rome. It's a simple story of her going to Rome to figure out who her dad really is, and she has a sneaking suspicion that her dad is Carmine Falcone. And so she's going to Rome to chase that down, and while she's there, she ends up being a party to a murder that she is then blamed for. And along the way, she's having nightmares. Why is that happening? And then she's getting met with various weapons of Batman's rogues galleries or an actual villain in and of themselves in the vision of Cheetah, who is actually a Wonder Woman rogues gallery person. She's there with the Riddler, and the Riddler is kind of trying to help her out, but what's his motivation? It's a very fun European style adventure that she goes on. It's got a very much a murder mystery flair to it, and I think Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb did a really good job of giving you a multifaceted Catwoman in this story. She's not her sexiness is there, but it's not the sum total of her character.
But they do get away with some pretty risque panels. I know that I turned the page, so to speak. I had to read the Hoopla Digital. Thank you, by the way, Jesse, for introducing me to Hoopla and saving me a fortune on my comic book budget. But yeah, the one thing where she's on the blonde's yacht and she's laying there, I believe the line is, "In the swimsuit I'm not wearing," and wowza, that ass.
Well, funny books are for boys. In many cases. Look,
Hey, I'm straight, and even I'm looking at her going, yowza.
Exactly. Hubba hubba. But so let's break this down. So like I said, she goes to Rome. She's there to meet... What's the character's name? She is there to meet Don Verini, and he is murdered with Joker venom. Catwoman's blamed, and so they go after her. And then there's a series of things that happen. Along the way, she also steals a ring from the Vatican. And this is all a ruse. This whole trip, and the Riddler helping her, has been a ruse with some helpful Scarecrow fear gas to drive her just nuts enough to reveal the identity to the Riddler of Batman. That's what this whole thing has... Like, half of this whole thing has been about. So she's there to learn who her dad is. She's trying to track down Carmine Falcone's wife, possibly her mother. And while she's there, the Riddler is using her to figure out who Batman is, which she does not know. Like, they reference... I don't know if you know anything about this. I guess maybe it's talked about in Dark Victory. But they reference Catwoman dating Batman and then leaving him. Because she says a couple of times, Batman was too controlling and this is why I left him. I don't know who his real identity is. And she, as Selina Kyle, doesn't know Bruce Wayne is Batman. So Riddler's plan is screwed from the start.
It does get a little confusing sometimes if you haven't read Dark Victory, because at least at one point, Selina mentions that in her head she calls Batman Bruce. And she kind of defaults on that because they're so similar. She doesn't actually know it's him, but the dots are there. She just hasn't connected the lines yet.
And she's willfully choosing not to.
That too.
So anyway, let me back up a second here. We'll take just the first part of the story here. It opens with her having...
Losing her bitch.
It opens with her in Gotham, and she's having yet another vision of Batman, and she's Batman takes off his mask and it's her father, and he shoots her. And then she's on her way to Rome. What did you think of the first bit of this and her initial relationship with the Riddler?
Well, it's interesting because whenever I see Catwoman and Riddler together, it always reminds me of Kingdom Come. Because in that one, you flash forward to the future, and for some reason, Selina and Riddler are married. And I remember that was one of the first books I ever got to talk about on this show. Well, not this show. Yeah, I was source material. I was like, wait, which comics-related show are we on right now?
Where am I? Where are my pants?
In this day and age, who needs pants?
Indeed.
Yeah. No, I always find it funny because I always go back to that because I remember talking about that with you guys and going, okay, who the heck thought those two would make a good couple? But then seeing them together, I'm like, okay, apparently I am in the minority here. So it is interesting seeing them together. I never really thought of Riddler's being that short. But again, when I think Riddler, I tend to go with the animated series with John Glover doing the voice of him. It's kind of where my head always ends up. So I never really think of him as like this tiny little meager man.
Yeah, I thought the Tim Sale version of the Riddler was a bit odd. Like, he almost comes across like the Mad Hatter, or what's the one with the puppet?
The ventriloquist.
Yeah, he kind of comes across like the Mad Hatter or the ventriloquist, and I'm like, the Riddler was always like comparatively tall as the Joker. I don't know why they made him a midget in this. I mean, maybe it's to give the guys of Catwoman, she's the star of the book. She's the hero, or the anti-hero, as it were. And I guess they want her to be, to a degree, imposing. And if you have the Riddler, looking like a regular man, maybe that doesn't come across nearly as well. So that's my only guess, was what they were going for here. Because the Riddler comes across more as, like, nebbish and impish, as opposed to this, heroic. I mean, they really draw Catwoman in this very striking. You know, she looks like Wonder Woman in this thing. So
she does.
So I can only imagine that's what they were going for.
I guess I could see it because, yeah, he does. For example, you have the scene where they're waiting at the luggage depot, and again, as I mentioned, she loses her luggage, and I love the line. He is like, this is why you should only use a carry-on. And she goes, I had 11 pairs of shoes to pack. You can't put 11 pairs of shoes in a carry-on bag, which kills me because I am actually the world's worst overpacker, as my husband or anyone in my family will tell you. I am the queen of, maybe I need this. I've never packed 11 pairs of shoes, though. I usually just try to go with one pair of boots. But I just love, you got the scene of him just kind of sitting on his carry-on next to her, and it looks like his clothes are a little oversized, maybe a bit baggy. Maybe that's an artistic choice from the shadows. It's kind of hard to tell. But he almost looks like a crony to her, like he's her bumbling assistant in a way.
So, not too long into, and she kind of has like a bullying relationship with the Riddler. He's before you realize he's using her, he's set up as trying to help her, earnestly trying to help her, like genuinely trying to be a friend to her. And she's like, all right, 2 rules. 1, never touch me. And like, okay. No means no. We get it. She's not interested in him. But it's like she's almost kind of mean to him. And Jeff Loeb, I don't think, writes the Riddler as particularly lecherous until the end of this, more towards the end of the story. And then, they kind of hide the lecherous behavior behind, well, she's being controlled with fear gas. And so a lot of the times that she's being sexual with the Riddler, it's because she's hallucinating.
True, but she does give him a chance to stand. For example, when they get to Rome, she goes and takes a bath, but then she sees somebody in her hotel room, and it's the Riddler. And she's like, okay, what the hell are you doing in here? And he's like, your phone was off the hook. I knocked. No one answered. Your door was ajar. I was coming in to leave you a note, make sure you're okay. It's not my fault that you didn't hear me. It's not my fault that, you didn't answer me. It's not my fault you were in the bath. And it looks for a second like everything's going to be okay. But then he adds, and if you ever want someone to wash your back, at which point we get a very cartoony panel of him getting thrown out as right. So I like, it's like, no, he doesn't immediately come across as smarmy. But then, of course, he's just got to step over the line just a touch. And then Selena properly ejects him.
I also thought this was kind of an odd characterization for the Riddler, because I never saw him as like a sexual being. I mean, maybe I haven't just read enough Riddler stuff, but the Riddler almost seemed like
his riddle sexuality. He never really seemed like he was interested in somebody else.
Yeah, very asexual. He had that sort of spectrum-y intelligence, asexual nature about him. Like, he was concerned with his value and his interests were wrapped up in his intelligence and his ability to put one over on Batman or those around him. The excessive and outlandish plots and getting away with it now, just outsmarting people, seemed to be the thing that got him off. Like, he never came, like, if this were Penguin, if this were Joker, if this were some of the other Batman, Kite Man, if these were some of the other Rogues Gallery guys, like, I get it. They've all been sexual to one degree or another. I never got that from the Riddler. So it's a weird characterization of him. I mean, I think it works in terms of an isolated story like this, but it does come out of left field, given the history of the Riddler.
I could see that. I mean, of course, nothing's going to, do away with the one panel of Catwoman and Riddler passionately kissing because she's been duped up on the hallucinogenic fear toxin. Which is hilarious because she's standing there in her underwear and he's standing on a box to reach up to her.
I mean, yes, as far as just for, pure enjoyment and visual ha-has, the book's got plenty of them in this. Like, I have to say, the book is a really great, like, Europa road tale murder mystery with some laughs to boot. Like, it's a great mix of genres in this. I thought Jeff Loeb did a really good job of fleshing out a fun story with a lot of different angles for something that's pretty straightforward. We meet the blonde, who, when I cast this movie in my head, and this might be like a duh kind of a thing, like everyone cast The Rock and everything, but like I saw the blonde and I'm like, oh, that's Chris Hemsworth.
Yes, undoubtedly. That's what you think he could do in a good Italian accent.
I don't care. Let him be Australian for all I give a shit. He's an Australian. He's in Italy. It's all fine. We can work around it. But so you have the blonde who's there to initially assassinate Catwoman, but ends up helping her, and turns out he has information that she needs on who her father is and what her origins are. So we move to the middle of the story here. Any thoughts on the blonde, by the way, before we move on?
He doesn't make as much of an impact in the first part of the book. And admittedly, I did like that he was a little bit more developed, because for a while it started to come to, okay, how many times are you just going to be there to save Catwoman's life?
Yeah.
You don't really learn that much about him until further into the book. He just shows up whenever the hotel's on fire. He's there to help her jump out the window. Somebody's got a gun on her on the boat. He's there to shoot the other guy. And I love the line in Italian, I'm not getting paid enough to shoot the blonde.
Yeah, he's kind of there as like a deus ex machina, and that's it. That he's just sort of, he serves as a plot contrivance.
But of course, we have to talk about the best panel in the whole thing.
Go ahead.
Catwoman returning after fleeing from the Don's home, where he was unfortunately killed with the Joker venom, to see that the airport found their luggage, and Edward Nygma is trying on her costume.
Oh, yeah. And that is why in the movie version of this, I cast Jim Parsons.
Oh shit, you're right. I was wondering about that, because I know you mentioned something about Jim Parsons on Facebook. I was like, what role is he talking about? You're right, putting two and two together. It actually reminds me of a classic Teen Titans episode. Robin goes on this quest to become a better fighter, and while he's gone, the rest of the Titans start digging through his closet and trying on his uniform and playing with his gadgets. There's this great line when Cyborg comes up. It's like, I can't believe you guys would break into Robin's room and play dress up without me.
Have you ever?
He said, without me, just so whiny. It's adorable.
Did you watch Hollywood on Netflix?
Not yet.
Okay. When you watch Hollywood and you see the scene of Jim Parsons dressed up like a gypsy, let me know. And then you'll understand why Jim Parsons needs to play the Riddler.
Do you think you could see Paul Dano dressed up like this? He's going to be playing the Riddler in the upcoming Batman movie.
I don't care about that. I'm concerned with my project, Catwoman, When in Rome, the movie.
Okay, fine. How about this? Next animated Batman movie we lobby to get Jim Parsons to play the Riddler.
Fair enough.
Which actually, now that I say it, why hasn't that happened yet? We know Parsons is a good voice actor. I mean, he's, classically trained. He would be perfect to do a Riddler voiceover work in the next animated Batman movie.
Well, and I don't want to get off too much on a tangent about this, but with Warner Brothers just throwing ideas at the wall to see what sticks, and not necessarily focusing on the chapter and verse way of producing movies that Marvel did, because that's been an abysmal failure for them, but instead just kind of doing director-driven projects. I would love to pitch this as a movie, because I think this as a Euro murder mystery with like a Charlize Theron as a Catwoman, and Jim Parsons as this iteration of the Riddler, and Chris Hemsworth. I think you have a winner here. Because then it's less like a comic book thing and more of, I don't know if you saw Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde, but something along those lines.
Not the whole thing. I only got to see a little bit of the film. Well, with our luck, they're going to do this as the next animated version, and they're going to animate it in the Timmiverse style. And we've already discussed in our reviews of Gotham by Gaslight and Superman Red Sun why that can be either a plus or a minus. Go check the archives. Plug.
All right, so over the course of the middle of this book, Catwoman's hotel room is burned down. She jumps into a pool, naked, of course, because why wouldn't you? She ends up in a fight with Guillermo's with the Don's son,
Guillermo.
Yeah, and he's using Mr. Freeze's ice gun on her, and so the question is, well, how did he get Mr. Freeze's ice gun? I
actually had to translate the conversation with Guillermo. It's like, what do you say? It's like, are we sure this works? Well, no, because you never tested it.
She gets out of that, and they free her from the block of ice she's frozen in. She ends up stealing the ring from the Vatican, but she's then attacked by Cheetah. Why is Cheetah in Rome, and why is she attacking her? Seeing as she typically is a Wonder Woman rogue. And after she's able to defeat Cheetah, which was the most unbelievable part of this book, and they wrote around it by saying she utilized tricks of the trade she learned from Batman. I was like, okay, sure. Cheetah, who can go one-on-one with Wonder Woman, who's Superman, basically. Come on. This was the only part of the book where I kind of rolled my eyes. Like, Catwoman doesn't have super strength. She's at best a gymnast.
Yeah. It's so weird seeing her fight Cheetah. For two cat-themed villains, both in the DC Rogues Gallery, I can't think of a time when these two ever shared anything in a comic or on screen. Cheetah is usually known for her alliance with the Legion of Doom, which Catwoman has never been a part of, outside of someone's fan fiction. Again, she's a Wonder Woman rogue, so she doesn't really cross paths that much. It's so bizarre to see them fighting together, but at the same time, like, well, if they're both cat-themed villains, why hasn't this happened before?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know who I would have... If you wanted to do a... as Joey Styles in ECW would say, cat fight! Cat fight!
Okay, yeah, we all heard that in our voice. Someone going, cat fight! You tell me you had that go off in your head the minute you saw me.
Again, I know you're not, I know you, to one degree or another, you're familiar with some wrestling, but I don't know if you're familiar with Joey Styles screaming cat fight in ECW, but that's what I heard.
I actually heard it in Richard Horowitz's voice when he said it as Billy in the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. So
you and I watch different things. Anyway,
I watch cartoons. That's why you hired me on this show.
It's very good. I don't know who else you would have used in this. Okay, so I get why they used Cheetah, because they wanted that look. They wanted an impressive physical woman to fight hand to hand with Catwoman, but Cheetah's too overpowered for Catwoman. It didn't make a tremendous amount of sense to me, and I don't know who else you put in that spot. Like, you put Harley Quinn in her 9 billionth book, I don't even know who else is out there that's a female character in just Batman's Rogues Gallery. I guess if you wanted to go outside of that, which they did, they went to a Wonder Woman person. But I don't know. I'd have to look, because again, I don't know who is, other than Harley Quinn, is just like a super gymnast that could go toe to toe with Catwoman without also because everybody else has superpowers of some kind.
Unfortunately, I think the artist got a little carried away with some of the artwork in this fight scene too. You have this one panel where they're both in, I guess you'll call it pounce position, and their tail, both of them. Yeah, Catwoman's costume has a tail in this. We were talking before the show started how at least we can all agree that when Catwoman has whiskers on her costume, she looks ridiculous.
Is that also like an allusion to the old 60s or 70s Catwoman costume where it was a purple leotard with whiskers and black boots?
Well, color is usually the de facto color. I never really look at the costume as being purple. I just look at that as the shade of the shading for a black costume.
Okay.
For example, when a lot of people said that Harley Quinn for the longest time was red and blue, and I looked, I'm like, that's not blue. That's just blue ink used to do shading on black. But apparently it's stuck, and now they use more red and blue for anything else. So, but purple is primarily the color for her. But again, they're both in the pounce position. They both have their tails kind of angled over them, almost in a scorpion like pose. And I was thinking, okay, well, with Cheetah, I get that. She does have a prehensile tail, and it can move in certain iterations of the character. Cheetah has been redone and redesigned more than I think any other character that I can think of. But Catwoman's tail is just part of the costume, and in some iterations it's not really a tail on the costume, it's just the way it's just her whip and the way it kind of looks like it's hanging off of her uniform. But
right. Why again, if you're a cat burglar, would you put a tail on yourself?
Yeah, exactly. I could just see that I see that basically falling to Edna Mode's no capes argument from The Incredibles. But again, right. It's just part of the costume. Why isn't it in a prehensile scorpion-like form? She shouldn't be able to control it like that. So again, it looks cool in the shot, but then you stop to think about it and you go, wait a minute, I don't think it should work like that. So again, I think the artist got a little carried away.
Yeah, so on the one hand, it looks Catwoman versus Cheetah in a cat-on-cat female fight looks cool, but when you think about it, Cheetah's way overpowered over Catwoman, and B, the whole thing just doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense. But it's like, I guess when you're writing these, it's like, well, do you want something that looks cool, or do you want it to make sense? And how much, we're spending a little bit of time talking about it, but how much of this do you really think readers are going to, is this where you stop reading the book and go, that's it, bridge too far? We're doing a degree of literature interpretation here with this, so you do have to kind of take some time to look at some of the finer points. But I think the average person reading this saw that and went, huh, cat fight, and turned the page.
Yeah, more than likely. I didn't really even think about it until you started dissecting it, and you are absolutely right. But again, we have seen Cheetah in various different forms. Hell, we're going to get a live-action version of Cheetah with the Wonder Woman sequel that's coming out soon, as long as society opens back up. And we don't even know what her powers are going to be with that, if she is going to have, massive increased strength or not.
I hope it's cat puns. It would be perfect.
Shut up, Schwarzenegger. Whenever I get bored, I watch Batman and Robin with the riff tracks on it. The Iceman cometh, the audience goeth.
So, shortly after all that...
we get Blondie, who tranks out Cheetah. And I love it because you see him going, merda, merda, which is essentially Italian for shit. So he basically tranks her, and then he's running down the hill going, shit, shit, shit.
All right, so shortly after that, Catwoman figures out the truth that the Riddler has betrayed her, and he's using the trademarks of Joker and Mr. Freeze and Scarecrow's fear gas, which is why she was having hallucinations of Batman. He did all this because he thought that Catwoman would reveal the identity of who Batman was, which Riddler seems to be obsessed with, which also seems to be a thing in Dark Victory, and I guess this is what leads to the Batman Hush storyline, according to the wiki. So, yeah, at some point we're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah, let's just say it here. Jeff Loeb has a serious thing for weaponizing the Riddler.
So anyway, after the Catwoman defeats the Riddler and his henchmen, the Riddler ends up with the ring, but it turns out to be a dummy, and he gasses himself with Scarecrow's fear gas. The blonde reveals that as a child, he was witness to his father's attempted infanticide on the Roman's second daughter in an effort to curry favor with his Don, who respected masculine children like you do, and that he believes that the daughter was Catwoman, though he has no proof. Louisa...
Yeah, they say the hospital burned down. So there are, and this was clearly before computerized records were a thing. So there is no official record at all.
So Louisa Falcone later kills the blonde for failing to murder Catwoman and bring her the capo ring. Catwoman waits for the blonde at the airport, but when he does not show, she returns to Gotham with no hard evidence to prove the identity of her parents. The story ends with a 2-page epilogue that is an identical scene from Batman Dark Victory, in which Catwoman bids farewell to Carmine Falcone at his grave. So we have it on the authority of the blonde that she is, in fact, the daughter of Carmine Falcone, for whatever that's worth. Overall, I really enjoyed this. And, despite sort of the nitpicking here and there, this was a breezy 6-issue read. Like, sometimes we read a 6-issue storyline, and about issue 4, I'm like, when is this fucking thing over? This one, I was very satisfied when it was done. I think it was the perfect length. I love the art. I love the story. I love her characterization. I really, other than the one gripe I have about using Cheetah instead of maybe a different character, I really don't have any complaints about this book. I'll give you the final word.
You realize this is probably the quickest show we've ever done.
Let's see here. Yeah, listen, so Jesse and I sometimes wrap these up pretty quickly too, so, that's about right.
Okay, I was just going to say, it's like final word. I'm like, we've barely been talking for like 45 minutes, seriously.
Well, if you have more to say, but I don't want to, we can keep going. I don't have anything else left really to say about the book.
It's okay. One of the things I really like about it is how they're able to use color theory really well to tell the difference between the storylines. You get this great bit in the middle where you have a backstory with how Selina came to start suspecting that the Roman was her father, and it's done in this gorgeous shading of orange and yellow, very fire-like colors. It really gives a passion to it, but at the same time, that this is taking place in a separate storyline. I'm a huge fan of the watercolor style art when it's done right. We have seen so many books that they use this watercolor and they're like, yes, it's genius. And we go, no, you look like you sneezed all over the credits. But this looks really good. I love all of the uses of blues and greens in the background to contrast against Selina's purple. Again, they're using purple primarily for the costume. I still say the whiskers and tail look ridiculous, but that's just me. I'm glad that they explained that her nightmares were a part of the fear toxin, because I think after the third one she woke up from, I was starting to think, okay, seriously, sweetie, I think you need to be on medication for having dreams this vivid, and I speak from experience. So
do you know who Renee Groix is? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Renee who?
Groix. According to the wiki, Tim Sale took inspiration for his art from Renee Groix, who's a French-Italian fashion illustrator. Count Renato Zavagli, professionally known as Renee Groix, was a fashion illustrator whose exaggerated portrayal of fashion design through painting has had a lasting effect on the fashion industry. You know anything about that?
Actually, I do not. Let me pull up the guy's website, which is currently down in Italian. Of course it is. Okay, let's pull him open on another site. Let's see if this works. No, I don't need a bio. I need a picture. I don't need a picture of his face. I need sample. Oh my God, these things never want to work. Okay, fine. Let's do this the other way. We copy and paste back into Google. Google, save us.
You could have just hit the link on the guy's name in the wiki.
I did, and all I got was his signature.
Terrific.
Yeah, no, I wanted to pull... Oh, okay, let's see here. Okay, yeah, I do see the influence in his work. It is absolutely gorgeous. It is exaggerated, strong minimalism, using bold colors, definitely a passion for red and black. Yeah, very much. I can definitely see the influence in the artwork.
Okay.
It is a really great book, and unfortunately, like we said, it is out of print, and trying to find a copy of this is probably going to cost you a pretty penny, so, I highly recommend checking out, but you're going to have to either do it online or be prepared to sink some money in and probably keep this thing in like one of those plastic seals, because if this thing gets damaged, you're going to feel the pain.
I just put it on. I put on my pirate hat and found it online. That's how I did it.
I've been trying to go easy on the pirating. Andre and I actually got one of those emails that said you need to stop this, and it was enough to make us go, okay, we should probably cut back.
All right, anything else about this book?
It really is gorgeous. I love seeing Catwoman done in a proper light. Like we said earlier, she's not an easy character to write solo because everyone either makes her too sexy or too cat-like,
or too
for lack of a better.
Like she ends up becoming basically female Batman, only in a cat costume, where she's a fucking ninja and she can do anything, and she's a giant asshole, and she's not a very likable. Like, I think that was the one element about this story that made me enjoy it so much, is that how likable the Catwoman character is. Like, she's a strong, I think, feminist protagonist without being a jackass and unlikable.
Not to mention, Catwoman is a character who, throughout the books, is known to use her sexuality in one form or another. She is a gorgeous woman, and she's not afraid to shy of that. We see her in lingerie. We see her naked. I mean, you're not going to see anything that's going to get, put in the 18 or older section style naked. But they don't shy away from showing off her bodily form, and it's not that bad. It takes you a little bit by surprise, but Catwoman has never been a character who shies away from showing off her figure, and they do use that here.
I mean, her alter ego is a socialite. She's a woman about town, and, she dates pretty men. That's, she's... in her own way, she is kind of like the Bruce Wayne Batman dynamic, where she's using this facade of a Gotham socialite to hide her true calling, which is to steal wealthy baubles and jewels and whatnot. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, she doesn't need to; she wants to, and that's always been the source of conflict between her and Batman. Is whenever they've been the thing, he's like, okay, well, go straight now, and she's like, I don't wanna. This is who I am. I'm a thief. I like being a thief. I'm good at it. You don't like it? Blow me.
I did like that line with her and Cheetah, where they're like, even though we go to the same, humane rights dinners. That was a great line.
So I think that's it. Unless you've got anything else, I think that wraps up our coverage here of Catwoman When in Rome. It was a nice little book. It was a very breezy read, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in a fun Catwoman tale. Yeah?
Absolutely. And hopefully here in the future, we will be looking at Batman Dark Victory as soon as we can fit things into the schedule.
All right. Next week, we are going to watch, this Friday, on Netflix, The Last Days of American Crime, which is a graphic novel. It was adapted into a movie, which will be premiering on Netflix Friday, June 5th. So we're going to watch the movie. We're going to read the graphic novel, The Last Days of American Crime. And then we're going to do a comic strip on it a week from tonight. So Monday, June 8th, Alexis and I will be together again for, instead of a source material, we're going to do a comic strip for The Last Days of American Crime. And then we're going to take a break from the books, because books are for burning. And we're going to talk Artemis Fowl on Disney+.
I love that so many of us basically said, okay, fine, if it's on Disney+, and we're like, well, if we don't have to pay any extra for it.
Well, when there's a lack of movies in theaters, and frankly a lack of theaters for movies, we'll take what we can get. And then a book that I've had on my bookshelf for over a year now, that I'm super excited about, and I've been waiting for a reason to have it on the schedule. We're going to talk Supergirl Being Super, which was, I believe, an award. I don't have it in front of me right this second. I can't find, but I believe this won some awards. This was a highly touted book. So we're going to do Supergirl Being Super on Source Material Live June 22nd, and then we close out the month of June in this series of source material lives with Batwoman, Volume 1, The Many Arms of Death. So, hope you'll be there for all of those. I'm happy to have Alexis with this series of books while Jesse is out. Tomorrow, on my birthday, June 2nd, speaking of riots, myself and Robert Winfrey will be talking Devilman Crybaby. So that'll be fun. Very, very prescient story, given all the heartache and heartbreak in the world right now. Jesse is back this month, but just to do a couple of Metal Hammer of Dooms with me, this week we're doing Ailstorm, Curse of the Crystal Coconut, and then finally myself and Pat Mullen will be adding the next chapter in our history of heavyweight boxing. We're going to be looking at Smokin' Joe Frazier, one of my favorite boxers of all time. Last week, myself and Alexis Hejna did a source material live for the Don Rosa Volume 9 collection of Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck comics called The Three Caballeros Ride Again. Myself and Chris Bailey reviewed AEW Double or Nothing, and then Alexis Hejna and I did a TV party for Legends of the Three Caballeros, currently on Disney+, originally airing in the Philippines. All right, that's all I got. Go ahead and do your plugs, and we'll get out of here.
All right. Well, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. We may be finally coming out of quarantine here, folks. Cape Comic-Con, June 10th through the 12th. I am double-checking my sources here. There is a very good chance that this show is still going to happen. Really looking forward to that. I need to interact with other human beings in the worst way. Besides you, Mark. You don't count. But anyways.
Not the first time I've heard that, won't be the last.
Well, I'm sure of it. This may be our only convention for a while, though, since Greater Austin Comic Con was moved to October, and the Fountain City Mini Convention here in Kansas City, Kansas, was they have unfortunately been either moved or canceled. Oh my God, these last few months have just been such a blur. They really have. I'm trying to get my schedule out. I'm like, wait. I mean, we joke about it's like, wait, what day is it? Do I need pants? But no, seriously, that is kind of where my head is at. I'm like, okay, seriously, what day is it? And do I actually have something coming up? But of course, even if you can't make it to Cape Girardeau for Cape Comic-Con, you can find our online stores at Etsy and Handmade at Amazon. We're putting out a bunch of new products as fast as we can. I'm currently working on our keychain collection, hoping to get those online. We have a bunch of brand new Monopoly token charm bracelets with some beautiful bead colorizations that I'm very happy about. Because, I actually ordered the right size beads this time. Hallelujah. And, of course, you can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Under Duress Twitter. Again, that's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
All right, folks. Well, they can't all be 3-hour podcasts, thank God. So this was a abbreviated, but I think we spent the right, proper amount of time on this book. As much time as it needed. Catwoman, When in Rome. Thank you, Alexis Hejna, for joining me tonight. We'll talk again next week. Until then, be well, be safe, and behave.
Arrivederci.